Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch. I'm the host of the show. I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you for tuning in. My guest on this episode is a really wonderful independent journalist who has his own podcast, radio show, does streaming video interviews with all kinds of fascinating guests talking about what's actually happening in the United States right now and in the world. He's a great guy and has a lot of good stuff to say, so we're just going to jump right in and meet him right now on this episode of Paradigms. Egberto Willies, welcome to Paradigms.
It's my honor to be with you.
I'm really thrilled to talk with you because I love the work you're doing. I think it is so important and so meaningful, and I wanted to just know more about you and share you with my listeners. So before we get into talking about the really hot, juicy stuff, I'd just love to know a little bit of your story and how you came to be doing this kind of journalism.
Well, let me just say, I moved here from a little country called Panama in Central America. People usually know about Panama because of the Panama Canal that started to be built in 1903, opened in 1914. But, you know, my forefathers, etc., they are folks who worked on the canal. Of course, we all migrated from the Caribbean, etc., to Panama and lived there ever after. First, we went to school in what was called Latin American schools on the Canal Zone. And because those were substandard schools, thereafter our people really did quite a bit of fighting. We got into admitted into the American schools. I got my last 2 years in American schools in Panama. I came over to the United States to study. I came on a music scholarship, even though I always knew I wanted to be an engineer. So I got the scholarship and immediately moved on to the University of Texas, Austin. And over in Austin, I worked full time while I was going to school, and got out of there in the 80s with a mechanical engineering degree. Worked in the oil industry. I worked in the space industry. I worked in several other industries for 5 years. A lot of that concentrated. And after that, I formed a software company where I developed communication software used by just about every type of company, from the space agencies to the Boeing, you know, to all these guys. NASA was one of my customers as well. I was always politically active, even in the university. You know, I was marching for the getting out of South Africa. We had this thing where we wanted the university to divest from South Africa. So I've been politically active there. But when I started working in corporate America, I decided that, you know what, kind of have to lay low. So I blogged in those days, blogs was like CompuServe. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yes.
All those little things, right? So one of my handles, the one that I used the most frequently, was Tolerant Liberal. All right. So Tolerant Liberal, I did a whole lot of writing on CompuServe and etc. And again, during my software company as well, because you're doing business with, you never know who, I had to keep a low profile. And also living in a very conservative area, my daughter went to school here, and I didn't want her to have any ill things against her with a crazy liberal dad in this conservative area. So I kind of kept low. As soon as she went to school in university, she also went to the University of Texas. As soon as she went to the University of Texas in 2009, I think it was all hell broke loose. I got a spot on the radio. I opened up my blog to WordPress and did the whole shebang. Was an active founding member of Coffee Party, moved to Amend, and you name it. I really exploded into doing what I really wanted to do. And a few years after that, it was like I couldn't do them both. I had to decide if I wanted to have a whole lot, have the good money coming in, etc. Luckily for me, the family that I had, they didn't mind downsizing and not spending the kind of money that we were able to spend before, because I decided to dedicate my life to doing political activism. And since I had a technical background, I could do all the things that you see me do with the videos and all of that. It was something that I could do. So I said, you know what? Been sitting down in the darkness asking, why don't somebody do something about what's happening in our body politic? The answer was, well, stop asking somebody, why can somebody do it, and you be a part of it. I'm just a very tiny part, but a bunch of tiny parts make a large thing. And here I am.
That is an awesome story, and I 100% agree. Every drop in the bucket matters because that's how we fill the bucket.
Amen.
I'm so glad to be talking with Egberto Willies, who is a really wonderful independent journalist. I hope you'll check out his Substack and his live YouTube channel, his newsletter. He's providing us with some really important information, talking about top issues of the day. What you're doing right now, you have a Substack site where you write, you do video interviews with all kinds of people. And I have to say, I love the fact that when you're doing those interviews live, you are accessible to your public live in that moment. You talk with us. People can call in and talk with you and talk with your guests. I think the way you're doing what you're doing is excellent. But I want to ask you, just getting right down to it, what are our top 3 issues of concern today, in your view?
My pet peeve, if you will, is healthcare for all. I think you can't have a society unless you have a healthy society. It turns out that I am married to a woman with a chronic disease called lupus. I've always had insurance, but it has always been a fight to make sure to get around the pre-existing condition stuff. Obamacare was a lifesaver for us because our bills dropped a bunch because of my wife having had lupus. And then going forward, it's almost a supreme being says, we're going to throw this on you because my daughter who was in med school, well, she finished med school, but her second year of med school, she got a stroke. Her third year of med school, she got a stroke. And I had to move up to DC to take care of her for 9 months. But she was determined, could hardly walk, gained probably 100 and something pounds with all the medication she had to do. She knew that she was going to finish that degree. Even if she couldn't be a practicing doctor, she was going to get finished at Howard University, which she did. After she finished, we moved back to Texas, and she's been recovering for, 3 years. And finally, she's recovered enough. Left side still damaged, but recovered enough that starting the end of this month, she will be a 6th grade science teacher. So I'm so very proud of her.
That is awesome. Good for her and good for you. That's beautiful. And you're right. Public health. I mean, it's kind of like everything relies on that. Everything rests upon that. And what we're seeing right now is that public health is being very deliberately sabotaged.
Yes. What I find is that we have really harmed people's psyche. What we've done is we have first taught them to not trust government. We've then taught them that individualism is a good thing. In other words, being an individual, that's what it's all about. Rugged individualism. So that if there's something that you are unable to attain, you don't really care to ask government, we the people, to give you the seed and start, but to see it as a rugged individual. If I can't get by, I just do it on my own. But third, in those two modals, in the government and individualism, what we've actually allowed is for then everything to be profitized, monetized. So therefore, a rugged individual who doesn't trust in government doesn't mind that there are these private corporations who lift themselves up by the bootstrap to charge you whatever they need to provide you a service. And if you can't afford it, tough. But if you can afford it, the rugged individualism in you says, I will. And you look at those who are unable to afford it as being failures. And that is how we are in the position, in my opinion, that we are in. We have taught people all the wrong things. We've missed the point as to what society means. Us coming together because together we're better than one. When my daughter got her stroke, and it was so very tough, my wife stayed in Texas because she drives school buses. She was the one providing health insurance for the family. I provided health insurance for 30-something years. But as soon as she got a job within the county, it reduced our rates for insurance. So she stayed. I went to DC to take care of my kid. I can't tell you what the support, when they talk about a village, the support, I had several villages. We had the church, her church, an organizational village. We had what I call the PDR posse village, the people who support what we do here at Politics Done Right. I can tell you what a village looks like because I am a part of a village with, again, my wife and her church and the other organization she's a part of. Out here with PDR Posse, the Politics Done Right Posse, they built a studio in my daughter's 4x4, in a little 4x4 area. They were the ones who said, I said, look, I'm going to keep doing this. They said, okay, we got the necessary laptop, the necessary lighting, the necessary, so that I could do my show out there for 9 months in DC out of a little tiny spot. And then, of course, the friends that I've developed over the years were another part of that village. Individualism is crap. We all need to be in this to pay it forward, which, since my daughter's been back, is a hell of a lot of what we've been doing, paying it forward.
You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life. What's your second issue, top issue of concern?
The second issue is freedom. A lot of people would say, why don't you put freedom first? Well, to fight for freedom, you got to be healthy. To fight for anything, you have to feel that the health care that your insurance provides you is not at risk, etc. So freedom would be definitely my second, the second tier. And the last tier would be a perfectly bifurcated economic system. Right now, we have a rogue capitalism that harms. And a lot of people don't see it because the capitalism is one of the best forms of abstraction. In other words, you live in a skyscraper or you live I live in the suburbs and things are beautiful and the streets are always kept up, the lawns are always kept up, etc. But the lawns are kept up because in a lot of areas, because we have a lot of undocumented immigrants that are there doing the work. We can have a high standard of living because we have a whole lot of immigrants picking fruits and vegetables that we don't want to pick, that if we had to pay Americans to pick, the price of these produces would be very high. We also have a society where we don't really treat people equitably. And that is a direct result of the type of economic system that we have. What I believe in is that if we decided that we were going to get serious, we would have the perfect system where capitalism is used as a tool and not as an ideology. We can have capitalism in things that people don't really have existential demand for. If you don't have an existential demand for a product, capitalism works fine. You can fight among pricing and all that kind of stuff. But where it comes to healthcare, when it comes to transportation, where it comes to energy, there are some areas that simply do not belong in the capital markets. If we take a look at, in fact, it is legalized theft that the oil on our public lands, the profits from the oil of our public lands, instead of going into the coffers of the treasury, actually goes into the coffers of the few that have the capital to invest in mining. And we can go over the forest. We can go over many of our natural resources, that it is for the person who has the capital to mine that hold the spoils, when all of that should be our natural right, specifically to the natives and those of us who now continue to maintain the land, of course, to us as well.
So those top three issues, health, freedom, and equity, I'm in full agreement. I want to ask you about something else now. So we have Donald Trump, who is obviously the front man for a much larger group of people who are a lot obviously smarter than he is. That's, the bar is pretty low there. We've got this current scandal that appears to be damaging his public persona, the Jeffrey Epstein files. But behind all of that, we have this Project 2025. We have a blueprint for establishing a patriarchal, white supremacist, Christo-fascist oligarchy in the United States, and it's being unrolled very quickly. As much as I really can't stand him, I recognize that he is the front man. He is just the useful idiot, and I think they're probably getting ready to get rid of him.
Wow.
Now there are stories about his health coming out, and he's not really very healthy, and he has a vascular disease that's long-term and chronic, so I'm just interested in your thoughts about what we're being presented with and what you think is really going on.
May I call you a genius?
Sure, go for it.
Let me tell you why. It's funny that you said that, because last night I wrote an article, and the reason is once you started there, I immediately pulled up the article on Substack, and its title is "The Epstein Story: A Distraction from Real Issues and the Oligarchy's Move to End Trump." That's the title of the that I gave. In there, I said the Jeffrey Epstein document release served as a calculated distraction from the systemic economic exploitation by Americans' oligarch class, while Trump faces scrutiny over his connections to Epstein. And the real crisis remains what's going on in our country today. But again, you said it. I normally don't. I try not to speak that way on the show. But yes, he's a useful idiot. You're absolutely right. They got in there so that the Supreme Court has been prepared. All these different areas have been prepared such that even if we take over the presidency and the House and the Senate, we are still in a governance issue because, again, the way they've set up the judiciary now, this stuff about 3 legs of government and they're co-equal, you can't be co-equal if you need 60 votes to do certain types of, or 67 votes to do certain types of override, like let's say impeach a judge or whatever. It is no longer the 3 equal. They have made sure that the judiciary, and again, their job is done. Okay, their job is done. And the problem is, while progressives and Democrats generally believe in following institutions, the Republicans don't care about institutions. So if a good Democrat, I notice I said a good Democrat, if a good Democrat takes over the White House, the Senate, and the House, and they pass laws, because of how our system works, every law could be deemed unconstitutional, such that they can get nothing done. If they said we want to pass Medicare for all, and it passes, and the president signs it, and an industrialist or a capitalist goes to the court and says, this is denying me my rights by having Medicare for all, and the Supreme Court pulls out of air some part of the Constitution that they reinterpret that way. You remember they used to be originalists, right? Not anymore.
Yeah.
But they go out there and they say, well, that is unconstitutional. And since by definition, Democrats are institutionalists, they'll likely follow the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Now, the converse, I don't think is true. I think that, first of all, the Supreme Court is already aligned with these guys. But if for some reason they come out with a judgment that they don't like, it's like what Jackson said, and Andrew Jackson from the long past, enforce it. Try to enforce it, Supreme Court.
This is the interesting thing, because they are making rulings that are clearly unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. They are writing law. They are doing everything the Republicans decried when it was a more liberal court.
Yes.
We now have, I don't know how many judges that have been installed, federal judges, circuit judges, etc. I mean, this is one of the first things that Hitler and Mussolini did, was stack their courts with judges who would go along with their agenda. And now we're there already. Like, we are now seeing the judges are striking down any good thing anyone does, it's being struck down. My thing I've been saying for a while now is that every executive order and every policy coming out of the Republicans right now is a death note. Every single one is designed to result in the deaths of hundreds, if not millions of people. And it's happening. I think right now, Trump policies are killing something I read, like 150 people a day.
Mm-hmm. I think that's on the low end.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. My feeling about all of this and about Project 2025 is it is a very deliberate cull of poor, elderly, BIPOC, LGBTQ, and political opponents. We are being killed off deliberately, and It's so much cheaper than having concentration camps to just do it with laws and
Mhm.
remove people's food. I mean, just today I read that now children will no longer be allowed to be on Medicaid for more than 1 year.
Wow. I didn't see that one. And when I did my research, I didn't ask that question, but that is crazy.
No, that's just today. That just came out. And every day there's more of these things, and they are all designed to kill. And it's happening. And as you say, this can only occur if we allow it. There is
Right.
no way for them to enforce this. The Supreme Court, I can't even call them that, the Roberts Court
Right.
has no ability to enforce any of what it's doing. We are all free to oppose and to disobey. And the more we do, frankly, the better, because otherwise the gray, dead future that these people want for us will be upon us. It's not here yet. The planet is still alive. We are still alive. But all of this is happening, but we don't have to allow it. And that, I think, is so important.
I am so glad you said that, because that is the thing. The thing about it that they always want you to do is they want you to lose hope. And when you lose hope, or when you give in, or when you acquiesce, that is when they win, because they're all paper tigers. The thing about it is we have allowed them to succeed. And just as we have allowed them to succeed, we can ensure that they fail.
Yes. You know, a very wise man, Matthew Fox, said to me a number of years ago, hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. And I have adapted that to say resist is a verb with its sleeves rolled up.
Yes.
It doesn't happen if we're passive. It requires real work and real effort, but it is doable.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that is why I do this program that I do. That's why I spend when I tell you I do this for 16 hours a day, and people say like, "Oh, aren't you tired, overworked?" And I'm tired. But you know what? There are two things. When you're doing something, first of all, that you believe in, and that you like, and that you know how to do it, you can just do it and do it and do it. And that's what it's all about.
You haven't used this language that I'm aware of, but what I perceive from you, which I admire so much, is what I call a commitment to the common good. And what else are we here for, if not to serve the common good?
Amen. I agree with that 100%. And I just can't fathom those who don't see it that way. Otherwise, Baruch, what's the point? I look at billionaires and I wonder, you have $1 billion. You can't spend $1 billion. What's the point? First of all, you really didn't work for it, but what's the point? After you've had certain things, it is like I said, I grew up very modestly in Panama. I came over here and did fairly well for a while. And, I think I've always told my wife, it's like, tomorrow, if I had to go flip burgers, I would flip burgers with a smile. I'll go out there and be nice to folk, try to put a smile on somebody's face. I tell people all the time that write into the show or whatever, and sometimes they'll say, "Oh, thank you, I got this out of it." That is so much better than in the old days when a boss called you and give you a pat on the back and say you got a raise. So much better, because one is genuine. So.
I love you. I really do. And I love and admire your positivity.
Dito, brother. Dito, brother. Dito.
I support what you're doing, and I am so glad you're doing it. And keep going, and let's turn this over.
We will. And with folks like you doing what you do, and exposing others as well, that all of this is a part of the whole thing. All of us have to do that bit of a lifting. And if we all do a bit of a lifting, there are a hell of a lot more of us than them.
Egberto Willies, thank you so much for talking with me and for doing what you do, and keep going.
It has been my honor, and thank you for having me, my friend.
Egberto Willies, thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking with me. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think the information you're bringing us is crucial, and I hope lots more people tune into your programs. Egberto is an example of someone who has made his commitment to the common good central in his life. Big respect. Folks, if you'd like to know more about Egberto, check out his various offerings. Go to egbertowillies.com, EGBERTOWILLIES.com, or politicsdoneright.com, or go to YouTube and just look for Egberto Willies. Tuning into his interviews and being part of the conversation with his guests is a really great experience. I encourage you to do it. And he does his live broadcasts on Facebook as well. So there are a lot of ways to access what he's putting out. So please check out Egberto Willies. And Egberto, thank you again so much. Please check out the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, where you'll find this episode and all others for you to listen to.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.